Source these from a high quality and they are going to be invaluable to your health. Foreign thing to us, and we're having to retrain this generation and the upcoming generation to actually use that. And the most vital, most nutritious thing I think you can have in your kitchen. This is how cooking used to be. Hey y'all, welcome to this video, and I'm going to be sharing you my top 5 staples for a from scratch cooking kitchen. I've gotten some interesting questions here lately about some of the foods we cook from scratch, and I used to share a lot more of that on this channel, like specific recipe videos, but I kind of drifted away from that and started sharing more vlog style videos or informational style videos. But I would like to get back to sharing some of our recipes, and I don't want to say recipes because I don't really have recipes, but more of the steps I take to create meals for my family from scratch. So in this video, if you have no idea how to cook from scratch, which I did not 2.5, 3 years ago, I was used to cooking packaged foods, buying everything at the grocery store, bread, broth, everything, milk, eggs, cake mixes, packaged, prepackaged pastas, foods like that. That was me 2.5, 3 years ago. So if you're wanting to slowly start drifting away from that, I'm going to be sharing with y'all the top 5 things that I would start getting in your kitchen, getting the hang of making before you start cooking all your meals from scratch. These 5 staples make cooking from scratch so simple. And y'all have seen these on my channel before. Y'all have seen me use these things, but I kind of want to just in one video show you these things, talk you through these things, tell you how to make these things, how to maintain these things, and why I value them so much in my from scratch kitchen. So I learned to cook from scratch basically from YouTube, Instagram, social media, just like you're probably watching this video today if you were interested in learning to cook from scratch. My mother taught me how to cook, but she didn't have the same mentality of cooking as I'm wanting to bring back into my family now. And I don't blame our mothers in any way for this, because their generation and the generation before them, some of our grandmothers, were sort of skipped in all of this, because that was the era when convenience came into play. Sliced bread, packaged foods, packaged pastas, the convenience factor came into play in their generation. And if they even wanted to learn to cook from scratch and cook more how I'm going to tell you in this video, they did not have the resources, the internet, the online family, the online community to learn from like our generation does today. So we are at a critical point of bringing that back into our generation and teaching that to our children, and we have all the resources in front of us right at our fingertips to learn that. So I do not fault our mother's generation or the generation before that, because they really didn't have the means. They didn't have someone in the kitchen teaching them all of this, because the convenience foods were coming into their homes, and it made life easier, and they didn't really realize how detrimental that was going to become to their health over the next several years. So with that being said, I pretty much have self-taught myself most of these things, learned most of these things from the internet, and hope to give you some few tips and teach you a few things today. First and foremost, the most vital, most nutritious thing I think you can have in your kitchen is homemade bone broth. This sounds intimidating to make, but it's actually one of the easiest things to keep in your kitchen, in your refrigerator, in your freezer at all times. You can buy bone broth at the store, but it's very pricey, and the minerals and the nutrition in the store-bought bone broth is nothing compared to homemade bone broth. Bone broth is very, very simple to make. You're just going to need bones, any bones from a roast, from pork chops, a chicken carcass, steak. If you buy a half cow, quarter cow, which is what we try to do, we get bones thrown in, so we have bones at all times. So simple to make. If you have bones on hand from a high quality fed, grass-fed animal, bone broth is a breeze. And chicken feet. That is my #1 tip for making that really gelatinous, jiggly bone broth. Forever I made bone broth. I actually have a video where I used to make bone broth. It was not that gelatinous thick bone broth that I now make, and the chicken feet have made the difference. So you're just going to toss all the bones that you've collected in the Instant Pot, cover it with water, throw in a splash of apple cider vinegar, and let it cook on the soup broth function for 4 to 8 hours. I usually do this for 24 hours, but I have cut my broth time down, and it's made it a lot more gelatinous. I think overcooking it can sometimes make it less gelatinous, and I've also heard that the heavy metals from the bones can start to seep into the broth after a certain amount of time, so I have shortened my cooking time for broth. Bone broth is a huge staple in our family. Next up, a sourdough starter. I never realized how much I would value my starter when I started it back in early 2020. And I believe sourdough has become a popularity, and people think it's a type of bread, but it's really just a style of cooking that was used hundreds of years ago. That's how all baked goods, baked breads were made. That's how they rose their baked goods, because they didn't have yeast and other things we use now to rise our baked goods. So Sourdough starter is invaluable in my kitchen. I literally make everything with sourdough starter, from bread, which is the most common thing, but that's probably one of the more challenging things. That's not actually what I started with my sourdough starter. I started with things like pancakes, pie crust, crackers. Crackers are by far the easiest. Tortillas. Basically anything that's baked goods we now use for sourdough. And it's not a difficult process to convert a regular recipe to a sourdough recipe. You're basically going to just swap out like the milk. If there's milk in the recipe, swap it out for the sourdough starter in the equal ratio. That's what works for me the most. Sometimes there's a little tweaking that needs to be done. Once you become familiar with your sourdough starter, you'll kind of learn how to tweak recipes and what they should look like. This is truly a learned skill though. So I have several videos where I talk about our sourdough starter, and I plan on incorporating more here and there, because working with sourdough is really a skill that 100 years ago we would have learned this from our childhood up, because we would have been watching our mothers and our grandmothers and our aunts cook with a sourdough starter. But now it's kind of just like a foreign thing to us, and we're having to retrain this generation and the upcoming generation to actually use that in bread products with a sourdough starter. And that long process is so rewarding than just the instant gratification that the previous generations learned from packaged goods, packaged cake mixes, packaged bread, everything. So it is an act of love to bake with sourdough starter, but it's truly a beautiful love gift to give your family. You can whip up a dinner with some ground beef or some sort of meat, sausage, pork, venison, mixed with some carrots, potatoes, possibly some peas or green beans, onion and garlic, and top it with my sourdough topping with a couple of eggs. And we have a dinner. Like, it's the easiest from scratch dinner that I could even think of. And I am gonna have a video coming up soon on our top quick from scratch dinners that you can whip up within 30 minutes or less. So stay tuned for that, and that will definitely be including a sourdough starter. So if you don't already have one, get you a starter. It's phenomenal in a from scratch kitchen. Next up is eggs. So this is not something that you have to create or make in your kitchen, but it's something you have to source and always have on hand, because eggs are so vital to our not only breakfast but dinners. We make so many dinners out of eggs. Now our chickens have been a little bit slacking this year, and we've had to buy some local eggs, which really hurts to go pay such a hefty price for eggs, because eggs are expensive everywhere now. I would not put my money to the grocery store eggs. I truly value finding a local farmer, knowing how their chickens are raised, and eating eggs from there. But anyways, eggs are so vital. You can make so many meals from eggs, not just breakfast. So things like a quiche, fill some eggs with some ground beef, pork, venison, again, whatever meat you have on hand, even chicken, cheese, carrots, potatoes. Mix it all together, cook it, and you have a delicious dinner. Having eggs on hand at all times gives you an abundance of recipe ideas, which again, I'll be sharing more on that when we get some more eggs from our backyard chickens. Next is milk. Now, we love raw milk. That's just a personal preference that we have. We actually have a cow who we are raising from a calf, and we'll soon breed her and have our own raw milk on our property. Right now we buy it locally, but there are so many things you can make from raw milk, and not to mention the nutrition. You make butter from scratch, which is absolutely delicious. Yogurt is a huge staple in our home. I have a video on how to make our yogurt in the Instant Pot, so you can check that one out. I still make it the same way 3 years later since making that video. What else do I make with milk? All of my Yoki drinks have milk in them, our Yoki coffees. Just milk is another staple. You can make so many delicious custard recipes with eggs and milk. You can make so many cream sauces. Milk is a staple in our bone broth gravy and any cream sauce I make for pastas. I've shared my bone broth gravy recipe before, but I will be bringing it back here in a couple weeks, showing you a video on how I use bone broth gravy. Milk is a staple in that recipe, so always having milk on hand is amazing. Also in our hot chocolate, I shared that on this channel before too, but bone broth and milk go into that. It's another staple, just always having milk on hand, and I absolutely cannot wait till we have our own cow in milk and I don't have to drive all over the road. It's sourcing our local milk. Well, we've had some great farmers around here who have been so kind and generous in keeping our family stocked up in our raw milk. Last but not least, number 5 is animal fats such as lard, tallow, or even just coconut oil if you can't source the animal fats. Animal fats are so undervalued these days. 100 years ago, like all of this, animal fats were sacred to people. When they cooked bacon, they saved the grease and cooked meals with that. And 5 years ago, just 3 years ago, I would have thought that is terrible. Discard the grease. We don't want to put that in our bodies. But animal fats from a good fed animal, where they were raised how God intended animals to be raised, the fats from those animals is just invaluable to our health. To make tallow or lard, it's actually very simple. You're just going to get the fat from the animal, chop it up very small, or if you have a grinder, you can grind it really small. You just want the fats in the smallest pieces possible. Then you're going to throw everything into your crock pot. This is how I do it. You could also use a stock pot, and let it melt, slowly simmer down, stir it occasionally, and it will melt down that fat and make a delicious saturated fat oil for you to cook with. So we cook everything in this. Our fried potatoes, French fries. If I fry a slice of chicken or round steak, I always use lard or tallow or sometimes coconut oil, but I truly value the animal fats over the coconut oil when possible. Those are the 5 things that I would suggest having in your kitchen at all times if you're wanting to be able to quickly cook from scratch meals. Those are things I'm constantly grabbing for, constantly going through my mind, that how can I put these things together with some meat, some potatoes, some carrots, onion, garlic, and make a delicious meal for our family. Again, it seems intimidating at first. I was very intimidated by many of these things, but the more I watched others do it online, on social media, on YouTube, Instagram, the more I just got in my kitchen and tried, the easier it became. And I'm going to be sharing some videos coming soon, more on how I do these things, but I wanted to share with y'all these 5 things that I always have on hand as I'm incorporating these foods. So if you're wanting to start cooking this way, you can start sourcing your local tallow and lard, sourcing local eggs, sourcing local milk if that's the thing for you, if that's something you want to invest in, getting a sourdough starter started, finding some bones to make bone broth. Those things are so invaluable, and I just want to spread the news that this is how cooking used to be. This is what our mothers and grandmothers and aunts would have been teaching us 100+ years ago. But like I said, we had some skips in generational values where things were, this style of cooking was kind of pushed aside and it wasn't passed down anymore. So it's truly up to us to pass this down, to pass this around to other women now in our generation and to the generations below us. So my daughter loves cooking with me, my son even does too, so I'm teaching them these things, and I just can't say how valuable it has been in learning to cook this way for our family's health. So let me know if you have any questions, if you have any specific requests on some things you want to see me make with these 5 ingredients, or just cooking in general that you have questions about and want me to share more on. I would love to create some more videos centered around that, because I truly love cooking from scratch. It's so fun, and you get to be so creative with it, and like I said, it's truly an act of love for your family. Thank y'all so much for watching this video, and I will see y'all in my next one.